Part 7. 6 Ways to Prevent Fatigue and Worry, and Keep Your Energy and Spirits High. Chapter 23. How to Add 1 hour a day to your waking life. Why am I writing a chapter on preventing fatigue in a book on preventing worry? That's simple, because fatigue often produces worry, or at least it makes you susceptible to worry. Any medical student will tell you that fatigue lowers your resistance to the emotions of fear and worry, so preventing fatigue tends to prevent worry. And did I say tends to prevent worry? This is putting it mildly. Dr. Edmund Jacobson goes much further. Dr. Jacobson has written 2 books on relaxation, Progressive Relaxation and You Must Relax. And as director of the University of Chicago Laboratory for Clinical Physiology, he spent years conducting investigations in using relaxation as a method in medical practice. He declares that any nervous or emotional state fails to exist in the presence of complete relaxation. That's another way of saying you cannot continue to worry if you relax. The first rule is rest often. Rest before you get tired. And why is that so important? Because fatigue accumulates with astonishing rapidity. The United States Army has discovered, by repeated tests, that even young men toughened by years of Army training, can march better, can hold up longer, if they throw down their packs and rest 10 minutes out of every hour. So the Army forces them to do just that. Your heart is just as smart as the U.S. Army. Your heart pumps enough blood through your body every day to fill a railway tank car. It exerts enough energy every 24 hours to shovel 20 tons of coal onto a platform 3 feet high. It does this incredible amount of work for 50, 70, maybe 90 years. How can it stand it? Dr. Walter B. Cannon of the Harvard Medical School explained it. He said, most people have the idea that the heart is working all the time. As a matter of fact, there's a definite rest period after each contraction. When beating at a moderate rate of 70 pulses per minute, the heart is actually working only 9 hours out of the 24. In the aggregate, its rest periods total a full 15 hours per day. During World War II, Winston Churchill, in his late 60s and early 70s, was able to work 16 hours a day, year after year, directing the war efforts of the British Empire, a phenomenal record. His secret? He worked in bed each morning until 11 o'clock, reading reports, dictating orders, making telephone calls, and holding important conferences. After lunch, he went to bed again and slept for an hour. In the evening, he went to bed once more and slept for 2 hours before having dinner at 8. He didn't cure fatigue. He didn't have to cure it. He prevented it. Because he rested frequently, he was able to work on, fresh and fit, until long past midnight. The original John D. Rockefeller made 2 extraordinary records. He accumulated the greatest fortune the world had ever seen up to that time, and he also lived to be 98. How did he do it? The chief reason, of course, was because he had inherited a tendency to live long. Another reason was his habit of taking a half-hour nap in his office every noon. He would lie down on his office couch, and not even the President of the United States could get John D. on the phone while he was having his snooze. In his excellent book, Why Be Tired, Daniel W. Joslin observed, "Rest is not a matter of doing absolutely nothing. Rest is repair." There is so much repair power in a short period of rest that even a 5-minute nap will help to forestall fatigue. Connie Mack, the grand old man of baseball, told me that if he didn't take an afternoon nap before a game, he was all tuckered out at around the 5th inning. But if he did go to sleep, if for only 5 minutes, he could last throughout an entire doubleheader without feeling tired. When I asked Eleanor Roosevelt how she was able to carry such an exhausting schedule during the 12 years she was in the White House, she said that before meeting a crowd or making a speech, she would often sit in a chair or davenport, close her eyes, and relax for 20 minutes. I once interviewed Gene Autry in his dressing room at Madison Square Garden, where he was the star attraction at the World's Championship Rodeo. I noticed an Army cot in his dressing room. "I lie down there every afternoon," Gene Autry said, "and get an hour's nap between performances." When I'm making pictures in Hollywood," he continued, "I often relax in a big easy chair and get 2 or 3 10-minute naps a day. They buck me up tremendously." Edison attributed his enormous energy and endurance to his habit of sleeping whenever he wanted to. I interviewed Henry Ford shortly before his 80th birthday. I was surprised to see how fresh and fine he looked. I asked him the secret. He said, "I never stand up when I can sit down, and I never sit down when I can lie down." Horace Mann, the father of modern education, did the same thing as he grew older. When he was president of Antioch College, he used to stretch out on a couch while interviewing students. I persuaded a motion picture director in Hollywood to try a similar technique. He confessed that it worked miracles. I refer to Jack Chertok, who was one of Hollywood's top directors. When he came to see me several years ago, he was then head of the short feature department of MGM. Worn out and exhausted, he had tried everything, tonics, vitamins, medicine. Nothing helped much. I suggested that he take a vacation a day. How? By stretching out in his office and relaxing while holding conferences with his staff writers. When I saw him again 2 years later, he said, "A miracle has happened. That's what my own physicians call it. I used to sit up in my chair, tense and taut, while discussing ideas for our short features. Now I stretch out on the office couch during these conferences. I feel better than I've felt in 20 years. Work 2 hours a day longer, yet I rarely get tired." How does all this apply to you? If you're a stenographer, you can't take naps in the office, as Edison did, and as Sam Goldwyn did, and if you're an accountant, you can't stretch out on the couch while discussing a financial statement with the boss. But if you live in a small city and go home for lunch, you may be able to take a 10-minute nap after lunch. That is what General George C. Marshall used to do. He felt he was so busy directing the U.S. Army in wartime that he had to rest at noon. If you're over 50 and feel you're too rushed to do it, then buy immediately all the life insurance you can get. Funerals come high, and suddenly these days, and your spouse may want to take your insurance money and marry a younger person. If you can't take a nap at noon, you can at least try to lie down for an hour before the evening meal. It is cheaper than a cocktail, and over a long stretch it is 5,467 times more effective. If you can sleep for an hour around 5, 6, or 7 o'clock, you can add 1 hour a day to your waking life. Why? How? Because an hour's nap before the evening meal, plus 6 hours sleep at night, a total of 7 hours, will do you more good than 8 hours of unbroken sleep. A physical worker can do more work if he takes more time out for rest. Frederick Taylor demonstrated that while working as a scientific management engineer with the Bethlehem Steel Company. He observed that laboring men were loading approximately 12.5 tons of pig iron per man each day on freight cars, and they were exhausted at noon. He made a scientific study of all the fatigue factors involved, and declared that these men should be loading not 12.5 tons of pig iron per day, but 47 tons per day. He figured that they ought to do almost 4 times as much as they were doing and not be exhausted. But prove it. Taylor selected a Mr. Schmidt, who was required to work by the stopwatch. Schmidt was told by the man who stood over him with a watch, "Now pick up a pig and walk. Now sit down and rest. Now walk. Now rest." And what happened? Schmidt carried 47 tons of pig iron each day, while the other men carried only 12.5 tons per man, and he practically never failed to work at this pace during the 3 years that Frederick Taylor was at Bethlehem. Schmidt was able to do this because he rested before he got tired. He worked approximately 26 minutes before he got tired. He worked approximately 26 minutes out of the hour and rested 34 minutes. He rested more than he worked, yet he did almost 4 times as much work as the others. Is this mere hearsay? No, you can read the record yourself on pages 41 through 62 of Principles of Scientific Management by Frederick Winslow Taylor. And let me repeat. Do what the Army does. Take frequent rests. Do what your heart does. Rest before you get tired, and you will add 1 hour a day to your waking life.